I'm Rebecca Brimmer with Bridges for Peace, and Taped with Rabbi Doug is coming up next.
We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug on your TV tonight. But Daddy, I want to watch Monday Night Football.
Forget about Monday Night Football. There's no other thing we're going to watch on Monday but Rabbi Doug.
Yeah, Rabbi Doug on TV tonight. We're going to see Rabbi Doug. Oh, everybody talk about Doug.
Shalom and welcome to Taped with Rabbi Doug. We are here today in Skokie, Illinois, and I want to welcome my guest, Rebecca Brimmer. Welcome to the show. I want to tell you a little bit about Rebecca because we have talked about this organization that she is part of before on our show. It's an organization that I admire very much because of their approach, because of their actions, and because of their philosophy. So Rebecca is the international president and CEO from Israel and globally of Bridges for Peace. And we had Reverend Bill on the show from Bridges for Peace, who is the
National Deputy Director.
National Vice President, National Deputy Director
Field
of
Director
Bridges for Peace.
or something,
Right.
I don't know.
And I got to tell you, he was not only an eloquent guest,
He's wonderful.
but a great spokesman for your organization. Rebecca directs the worldwide organization with international headquarters in Israel and 8 other national offices. She's spokesman on behalf of Bridges for Peace in many venues through the printed page, radio, television, public meetings, and conferences. She's a published author and editor-in-chief of the Dispatch from Jerusalem. She's ordained with the International Ministerial Fellowship and has resided in Israel since 1990 with her husband Tom, who I've also met. And welcome to Chicago.
Thank you.
To Skokie.
The Windy City.
The Windy City. And welcome to the show. You know, I want to just start out in talking a little bit about you and a little bit about Bridges for Peace.
Okay.
You're ordained and you have a mission. And it's a personal mission. And if we can start out and talk about your family connection to Israel and how you grew in your love for Israel. Now, I just, and preempting that, I want to talk about Bridges for Peace. For those of you who didn't see the last time that we covered that on our show, is an organization of Christians who believe and demonstrate that the Bible, the Holy Scriptures, have ordained all people to accept the fact that Israel is the Jewish homeland, and the prophecies in the Bible, in the Old Testament, ordained that that should be supported by all people as a fact, and that's what Bridges for Peace does. It helps the people of Israel, it supports the people of Israel, and it builds a loving friendship, brotherhood between the Christians and the Jewish people, supporting Israel as a biblical command. So let's go back to you now, and we'll talk more about that as we go along.
Right.
Tell me about how did you as an individual, and I know this comes from your family, how did you all connect to Israel when you were young that brought you to this point today?
Right, so my father was a little boy growing up in South Dakota in a very small town, and he always told me the story when I was growing up that a man came to their town from Germany. His name was Hans Brettschneider. And this man came to his town and spoke in the little church that he attended with his family and said, the Bible says that the Jewish people will come back from all over the world to their ancient homeland. And the people of this little town, they thought it was a crazy idea. You know,
what year was this?
This was 1941.
1941.
1941. And of course, you know, it probably didn't seem very likely to people that it would happen. And so fast forward, my dad is a teenager, he's in high school, and they announced on the loudspeaker in his school, in this little town in South Dakota, that Israel had become a nation. And he always said, he says, suddenly, he says, every hair on my body stood straight up, and I knew I was alive in really important, significant times. And he carried that enthusiasm for the Word of God, for the Bible, and for Israel into his whole life.
Did he ever go to Israel as a young boy?
No, never.
So he never really had a connection until he remembered what this German visitor said
exactly.
and heard this loudspeaker announcement.
Exactly. And in fact, it impressed
It was revelation.
Really, he felt that way. And in fact, it impacted him so much that instead of going to school and becoming an engineer that he'd thought about, he went to school to become a clergyman. And he became a Christian minister. And he was always fascinated with anything to do with Israel and anything to do with the Jewish prophetic scriptures. And so I grew up in a home where my dad would come home with a Newsweek magazine or a Time or a newspaper, and he'd lay it on the table and he'd say, look, girls, look what happened. And he says, this is exactly like the prophet Isaiah talked about her. And he'd turn in the Bible to Isaiah and read us a passage of scripture. And so I grew up with this idea that God was actually actively performing his prophetic scriptures in our day. And that if we really loved God, then we needed to figure out how he wanted us to be involved in it.
Wow.
So it wasn't theoretical in my family. My father was like, okay, let's look. Now the Jews in Russia, the refuseniks, they're being put in prison. Let's pray for them. And he gave us Star of David necklaces with people's names on them and told us to pray for them. Sylva Zalmanson was on one of our necklaces. You know, we wore Let My People Go t-shirts. We visited Israel.
And we're talking about this little town in South Dakota.
Yes, although he had left there by then.
No, I'm saying this is an in town. He didn't really know many Jewish people.
No, I don't think so.
And
although interestingly enough, a Jewish family became involved in my mother's life as a teenager. She had a rough growing up time, and she left home when she was 16. And a Jewish family in the town where she lived in South Dakota actually took her in. And she lived with them while she finished high school and did their ironing for them and helped with their kids and so on.
So interesting.
So very interesting. And when they met in Springfield, Missouri, which is where the Bible school is that my father attended. And when my dad asked my mom to marry him, he said, look, I don't promise you'll ever have a lot of things. I'm going to be a clergyman, and clergymen in the 50s, they didn't make much money. No. And he says, I don't even promise you'll own your own house. He says, but I promise you I will love you forever, and if you will marry me, someday I'll take you to visit Israel.
He said that in his proposal. That's a great story.
Yeah, it's great. And so it took until 1969. He went to Israel the first time by himself in 68. And in 1969 he came back and he told my mother, he said, next year I'm going to take you. I'm going to fulfill my promise. And the year after that I'll take Becky, that's me. And the following year,
How old were you?
I was in 69. I was 13. Mm-hmm. So you all know I'm 60 now. It saves all that math. My sister, he said, I'll take my sister the next year. She was 2 years younger. And my mom said, no, I don't want to go without my girls. She says, let's wait 3 years and we'll all go together as a family. And my dad said, I can't wait. He says, I'll take you all, we'll borrow the money, we'll all go next year. So that's how I went to Israel the first time. And there was something about Israel that just grabbed me. Maybe it was because I'd grown up hearing all the things from the Bible and experiencing my dad's feelings about it, but it never left. It was always just in my heart.
So you were there post 6-Day War,
Right.
pre-Yom Kippur War.
That's right.
And Israel was a different place than it is today.
That's true.
And you were moved that first trip.
Yeah, I was young, but it was always just really important to me.
So your father had a congregation?
No, actually,
my father... Never did, he was just ordained?
He had a congregation for a time, but he was what they call in Protestant circles an evangelist, which meant that he traveled around from church to church and did special meetings, and his specialty was Israel and the prophets of the Bible. So we heard about it all whole lives.
And you must know a lot about it because
I guess so.
That's really great. That's really great. So let's go fast forward a little bit to you becoming an adult before you met your husband. How did you two meet, first of all?
We met in the same Bible college that my parents met in.
Wow.
Isn't that something?
That is amazing.
Yeah.
So you stayed in Missouri for a long time?
Well, actually, we just came and went.
You came and went?
Yeah.
So where did you actually grow up? Your father grew up in South Dakota. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in all over the United States because we traveled as a family. And
because your father was an evangelist teacher?
That's right. So every week or two we'd move to a new place. And I was homeschooled before homeschooling was popular. So,
wow, that's
yeah,
so amazing.
interesting life.
So amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's
So-
fast forward again. Let's
Yeah.
fast forward again. You and your husband are married.
Right.
He had the same love for Israel
He
when
had
you
never
met him?
been to Israel, but he had this desire to go. And a couple of years after we were married, my dad called up one day and he said, "We want to take you both to Israel." And he said, "It's just not right that someone would be a member of our family and never have visited Israel." So in 1979, we came together as a couple. And it was on that time that my husband turned to me and he says, "I have the oddest feeling in the world." He said, "I feel like I am coming to the center of the world." And when it was time to leave, he says, "I am so sad. I feel like I'm leaving. I need to stay here." It was so, it just grabbed him too. And from that moment on, we knew that we were going to be going back to Israel. We didn't know how it was going to happen, but we knew it was going to happen.
It's an amazing story.
Yeah.
And you don't hear this from Christian families. Now, has there ever been the desire within your family to bring Christianity to Israel beyond the Christian communities in Israel? Because that sometimes when you have that feeling, you want to spread the word in your own way, or was this really a personal love for Israel because of your connections? How did you lead into those things?
So we didn't go there with that idea in mind. Of course, we're Christians, and if we didn't believe it, we wouldn't be Christians.
Right.
So we recognize that there are big differences of opinion between Christians and Jews. But it seems to me that for nearly 2,000 years we've been concentrating on what we don't agree on.
Right.
And maybe it would be more effective if we just concentrate for a while on all the really wonderful things that we do agree on.
I love that philosophy, which is the philosophy of Bridges for Peace. So let me move ahead now to Bridges for Peace.
Yes.
Now, you got involved in Bridges for Peace after you moved to Israel, is that
That's
correct?
right.
So you and your husband made the decision, was it 1990?
Well, actually, a little earlier than that, we went for a year and volunteered on a kibbutz.
Very nice. Which kibbutz was it?
So we were, actually two. First one was kibbutz Ginigar, which is just down the hill from Nazareth. And the second one was kibbutz Mayan Tzvi, which is right near Zikron Yaakov on the coast, on the Mediterranean. So we spent almost a year in Israel volunteering in a kibbutz. In the second kibbutz, we studied Hebrew for 5.5 months in a Olpan Ivrit, Olpan Avodah, actually, I should say, which is you work half the day and you study half the day. So we did that for 5.5 months in 1988. And then we went back to the States for a year and a half before we moved to Israel in the beginning of 1990.
And you decided to, quote unquote, go on Aliyah with your husband and move to Israel to live as your permanent home, not leaving residence of the United States, but making it your secondary home. Is that right?
That's kind of how it worked out, although, in the beginning we didn't understand all of that. We just knew we were going, and we didn't know it was going to be forever. Of course, it's been 27 years now, so I guess that's pretty much along the way to forever.
Yeah, it is along the way to forever. Weren't you frightened moving to Israel without having any prior plans there? You went and you were on kibbutz. That's a program,
Right.
per se. You went there on a program. And here you're just picking up and moving
So-
without anything really concrete to move to, and made that decision, which is a philosophical decision that someone has to make in their head and say, this is what I want, and no matter what happens, this is what I'm going to do. And there are people, who are Jewish who go on Aliyah with that same tendency and thought. And for many it works out. For a few, they end up returning because their dream didn't come true for them as far as being able to make it the way they thought they would. And how did you two make it? Tell me.
Okay, so first of all, we did have a little bit of a structure. We went to help and volunteer with a Canadian Christian couple in Jerusalem, and so they gave us a little bit of structure but no money. At least there. But when we landed, I remember landing in Tel Aviv. We came on a tour with my parents. My dad led tours to Israel, and they left us off in a 3-star hotel in Tel Aviv where we were going to get a taxi to our destination the next day. And I remember sitting in that little room in Tel Aviv and looking at my husband and saying, what in the world have we done? How are we going to do this? But it was momentary. We had vision, we had hope, we were fairly young, we were in our early 30s. You know, it worked.
That's amazing.
It's
and he became a tour guide.
He became a tour guide, and I came to Bridges for Peace.
So did Bridges for Peace exist before you came to them?
Yes. Actually, our founder moved to Israel in 1964. And he began a school for Christians to learn about their Bible within the context of the Bible, the language of the Bible, the geography of the Bible, and so on. And at the same time, he was what you might call a mensch.
What is his name?
Dr. G. Douglas Young. And he just loved people. He got to know people. He drove the van for the school. He volunteered as an ambulance during the 6-Day War. And so his wife was making sandwiches for soldiers, and his students were filling sandbags. And so on the one hand, he was a real educational emphasis in his school. On the other hand, he just was just this heart that just loved people. And so when he got to nearing to his retirement age, his board said, look, we're not going to get another college president that wants to do all these other things you're doing. So you need to split your activities in two. One half can be the college, and the other half can be all this other stuff you do, and that turned into Bridges for Peace.
Wow.
So we say we've been 50 years of blessing, but we've got 40 years of incorporation.
Amazing, amazing. So let me come back to you getting involved in Bridges for Peace. Now the two of you are living in Israel. You're
Right.
living your dream. You're searching a little bit for some more meaning in what you're doing,
Right.
because this is really why you came there.
Right.
How did you hook up with them to begin with?
Okay, so we had this friend that worked at Bridges for Peace, and there was an opening as an assistant to the former director, and he kept calling. He says, Becky, you're perfect for this job. And I said, I'm busy. I'm working with this Canadian couple. I already have something I'm doing, and so, you know, come on. I can't do this. I can't just up and leave. And he wouldn't quit. Every day or so he would call me. And so finally I said, you know what, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to go over there, I'm going to have this interview, and then when I say that I'm already doing something, it'll be all done, and this guy won't keep calling me every day. So I went to the interview, and I basically interviewed the guy that was supposed to be interviewing me, you know, and at the end of it, somehow I had accepted a job.
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
So that was in 1993, and I have this philosophy of life, which is that whatever you do, you should do the very best you can. You know, and so that's what I did. Everything they handed me to do, I did a good job, because that was how I do things.
So you've been doing this for 23 years
Yeah.
for Bridges for Peace.
And
Bridges for Peace, just like the land of Israel has changed, Bridges for Peace has
That's
changed,
right.
expanded, doing more things
That's right.
for what they believe and for the people of Israel. How long is it before you ended up in your position as CEO?
So I've been CEO for 11 years.
11 years.
And for 4 years before that, I was COO. So for the last 15 years, I've been in the top leadership of the organization.
Do you feel that you yourself have made a difference in the direction of Bridges for Peace? Or do you feel like your volunteers and your staff have really made the difference, and you're just proud to be part of it?
So basically, when I became CEO, I told the board, I said, look, if you want to build a short bridge, then leave things the way they are, where the CEO is basically doing everything. I said, I don't really.
It's like the rabbi of a synagogue.
I said, I don't want it to be that way. I said, what I want to do is I want to equip people so we can build a lot longer bridge, a lot wider bridge, a lot of people involved. And so really from that aspect, my attitude was a seed change in the organization. So we really started equipping people, training people. We do a 2-week training course in Israel every year called the Israel Institute. And we deliberately pour into people. We mentor them in this whole idea of how we as Christians can support Israel. And in this way, it's not just all about me. You know, so you met Bill Adams. He's one that we chose to do
Reverend
that.
Bill Adams is an amazing person.
And you've met Laura and Tony.
Yes,
There's another couple here in the Chicago
Tony and
area.
Virgo and Laura are they're like the Illinois connection.
That's right.
And they're so committed, and of course I've become personal friends with them over the years, not for Bridges for Peace, but along with being friends with them, they introduced me to Bridges for Peace, which is, of course, how I met Bill Adams and how I met you today.
Right.
So tell me this. You are in Israel, but your real goal is to turn on Christians to the understanding that Israel is the Jewish homeland, that the Bible proclaims it to be such, and it should be supported by all, and that proclamation of the Bible should be supported by all. How do you, from Israel, inspire people around the world?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yes, so we do it through a variety of reasons, of course. Right now I'm on a trip all over the United States and Canada, and I'm going from place to place, and part of what I'm doing is talking with you, but I'm also trying to meet with many of our representatives and pour into them and spend time with them and mentor them. But we also do it through the internet and through publications and books and all sorts of whatever medium we can, we use it. And you know, I think for centuries Christians have basically had the attitude of, we want to receive the blessings from the God of Israel. But unfortunately, for most of the last 2,000 years, they've said, but we don't want to know anything about the Israel of God. And I'm trying to change that.
That's
I
cool.
think it's really, really important to recognize that they're linked. You can't have the God of Israel without recognizing that there is an Israel of God. So, you know, we mentioned all the things we had that we have in common. Well, I think it's time to stir that up. And so I try to help Christians understand it's not just about Bible prophecy and the things that are happening, and it's exciting, of course, but it's also about, we don't understand our own scriptures because we don't understand how the Jews of the first century thought.
So I want to.
So we try to help them with that.
I want to show a video about a little bit about what Bridges for Peace does. But give me in a quick scenario. Tell me actions in Israel of Bridges for Peace.
Right. So we're reaching out with unconditional love, no strings attached, to show the Jews of Israel and the world that there are Christians today that want to see them blessed. And don't have any ulterior.
And what
motives.
activities do you guys do in Israel?
We're giving food to 23,000 people every month. We're helping Jewish people make Aliyah from the former Soviet Union and other parts of the world. We're repairing homes for Holocaust survivors. Well, the list goes on.
And it goes on. And we're going to take a look at a little bit of that. So stay with us here on Taped with Rabbi Doug. I'm very, very happy to have Rebecca Brimmer with us here, and we'll be right back.
Bridges for Peace. Christians supporting Israel and building relationships between Christians and Jews in Israel and around the world. Bridges for Peace, 50 years of blessing Israel and the church through compassion and revelation. Compassion, feeding Israel's hungry, caring for Israel's needy, repairing homes, giving hope to children in poverty, helping the Jewish people return to their ancient homeland. Revelation, bringing the Bible to life in its ancient context, revealing the truth of Israel's prophetic significance, telling the story of Israel's miraculous rebirth. Bridges for Peace, your Israel connection.
Welcome back. I'm here with Rebecca Brimmer. She is the CEO of Bridges for Peace, and she is an Israeli citizen for the most part. She's a permanent resident in Israel and still maintains residence in the United States to visit the United States. But she's been there for 27 years?
27 years.
27 years, she and her husband. And so we just saw a little bit about what Bridges for Peace does. But right here in the United States, when you're not doing, what is Bridges for Peace doing here to make a difference?
Right.
And in other countries, and we can talk about a little bit about that too. But what are we doing outside of Israel? Because we see that you're helping so many people in Israel as part of your love of Israel. What are you doing outside of Israel?
So basically, outside of Israel, our primary activity is to really change the hearts of Christians. And so we're doing a lot of educational work. And some of the things we're trying to do are helping them to understand the context of the Bible, helping them to understand their own system of faith through the Hebrew language, through the geography of Israel.
And it's non-denominational Christian, right?
Non-denominational, that's right. We try to reach as many Christians as possible and not to emphasize the things we don't have in common even in the Christian world. But also to help them understand how exciting it is to be alive today when the words of Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel and all the gang of prophets, that's actually happening. Mm-hmm. So we help them to understand that. We also do a lot of what in Israel we call hasbara. Mm-hmm. Well, that's basically speaking out the positive news about Israel. Mm-hmm. So we have a magazine that does that. It shows people sides of Israel they never hear in the mainstream news.
So would you say that most of the activists of Bridges for Peace are Old Testament scholars, meaning that they can quote where in the Bible it teaches that we should all love Israel and support it as being the Jewish homeland? And do your people get taught those things? Is that part of what you do?
We are teaching them those things, mm-hmm. and we have ongoing educational activities for the people that work for us, that represent mm-hmm. us. Mm-hmm. So I would say yes. I think almost anybody from Bridges for Peace that you meet would be able to do just what you said. Now, they may not have the degree, the letters after their name to say they're an Old Testament scholar.
When Bill Adams,
a lot of them do. Bill Adams is a doctorate.
Yes. When he was on my show, we talked about Yechiel Eckstein, Rabbi Yechiel Eckstein, and we talked about his organization, Fellowship of Christians and Jews, and, mm-hmm. and what they do. Do you have any interactions with that group?
Well, interestingly enough, when Yechiel Eckstein was first starting out in Israel, he didn't have a big setup. Mm-hmm. And so we actually distributed baskets of food in his name, put his cards in them, but we packed all the boxes and we went out and bought the food and he would send us a check. Wonderful. Now, as he grew and as the fellowship got bigger, then of course he started his own setup and everything. But there are connections going way back. Yeah,
just amazing, just amazing. Well, I can't thank you enough.
Yes.
For being on the show. Time has just flown by. Mm. I want to just wish you all the best, much success with Bridges for Peace, because the key word is bridges. You're building bridges mm-hmm. between the Christians and the Jewish people, between Israel and the world,
right?
And between the brotherhood of people who are believers. Amen. And I think that that is a really, really important thing for us all to realize, that exactly what you said, which I just loved, and you put it as we need to find the things we have in common and build on those rather than the things that we don't have in common.
Yeah, we can just leave that to let the Almighty figure out, don't you think?
Right, absolutely. We call that, in Judaism, we call that teku. When Elijah the prophet comes, he'll explain all that to us because we're too confused right now. So I do want to thank you for being on the show.
You're welcome.
Reverend Rebecca J. Brimmer, the CEO of Bridges for Peace, residing in Israel and visiting us here in the Chicago area. I want to thank all of you for being with us. Remember, if you want to check out our website, it's www.tvrabbi.com, where you can also see Bill Adams, who was on my show from Bridges for Peace in past years, and other shows from the past. If you want to email Rebecca or me, or ask any questions, I will be happy to forward that email to her, and I know she'll get back to you personally. Yes. The email address is info@tvrabbi.com. Once again, I want to thank you for being on the show. I want to thank all of you. Hope to see you all next time right here on Taped with Rabbi Doug. Shalom, everyone.
Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug on the TV tonight.
This has been a Taped with Rabbi Doug production.